Yeah, I can record it now.
Sweet.
Thank you.
You're muted, Maxie.
Sorry. Hi there. I just saw this, so I'm very interested in this conversation, of course, being that I've been shooting in the Amazon.
Yeah.
The film.
You were one of the producers of the From Shock to Awe, no? Am I right about that?
I'm the executive producer of From Shock to Awe, and I am currently directing and producing a new film called Ayahuasca Diaries, and have been filming with tribes in Brazil, Peru, and Colombia.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Well, I think we might as well get started. I'm going to pass the baton to Rob.
Okay.
Let's get on with the show. I'll just
Thank
give
you.
a minute as they pop in.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Wonderful that you have joined. Daniel, thank you very much for giving me this platform, this opportunity. I think you're an amazing writer and one of the most important voices of the transformation of humanity that we all know we need to go through. So I'm very happy to connect to you and to everybody here. I've prepared a quick PowerPoint presentation to go through today's story, and it was a quick job, so maybe it's not 100% well designed, but let's see. I hope I can get you through this journey. So let me see. No, I need to
go. You got to go full screen, I think. There you go.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Perfect.
Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so basically that is the title of today, The Great Turning for the Amazon. The time has come. Let me first introduce you to two people under whose guidance I am working. It is Aru Kuntanawa, a leader of the Kuntanawa tribe in Acre, Brazil. And I'm also inspired by Professor Carlos Nobre, one of the most important scientists working on solutions for the Amazon, which he calls the Amazon the Third Way. I myself, I am Dutch. I'm 65 years old. I normally live in the rainforest in Brazil, but not the Amazon rainforest, but in the Mata Atlântica rainforest, where I'm regenerating an area that has been largely destroyed of the forest. And but my most important mission is actually working on a turnaround in the Amazon. Okay, a couple of things I'm going to say is probably clear to everybody, but let's just repeat the whole thing again. We're in big trouble. We have an unprecedented planetary emergency. There is lack of awareness, and I have to get these things out of the way. And there's lack of imagination for solutions. We will need to transform the way we live as a species pretty soon. The race is on because it's a neck-on-neck race between transformation and destruction, the way I see it. You probably are familiar with this article, The Tipping Points, but I'd like to repeat them again. About 1.5 years ago, an article came out of a group of eminent climate scientists telling us that 9 out of the global systemic tipping points are on the move. You've been reading about them. It's of course the ice sheets that are losing quickly, that are melting and losing weight and becoming unstable. The permafrost in Siberia, in Canada, and Alaska is thawing and adding methane to the atmosphere. The coral reefs, especially the Great Barrier Reef, are dying, which is destructive for the biodiversity in the oceans. The boreal forests are under threat of large fires because, especially in the Arctic, the temperatures are heating up 3 times more than on the rest of the planet. The Arctic sea ice is is reducing very fast, which has effects both on the albedo effect and is in a sort of a downward spiral. And the Atlantic Ocean circulation is slowing down, which basically means that the climate in Europe will probably change over the next decades in sort of counter-intuitive ways, probably colder weathers and hotter summers. And then, of course, there's the last, and here I didn't mention the first tipping point, the Amazon rainforest, which is at the point of dieback. We're going to talk about that today. All these climate tipping points are interrelated, and in effect, it's a domino effect that will reinforce. Once one is falling or going down, the other ones will accelerate as well. Okay, again, not great show. This is just from a week ago, I think, when somebody did the calculation of all the pledges to cut down greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And it's a total of 75 nations that have done their climate plan, national climate plans. Basically, by 2030, if they keep to their pledges, there is no reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. In other words, the way we're going right now, we can't even limit it to 2 degrees. Not really news, but this is tabulated. Just a week ago came out the scorecard of forests. Also in 2020, the situation was dramatic. In fact, the forests destruction increased sharply around the world. So here we are. We have about a decade for a complete metamorphosis in order to get us out of this mess, which means we need an energy and food revolution. We need to move to a circular economy. We have to restore nature and degraded land on a vast scale. And we're talking 1 billion+ hectares here, something the size of China or the United States. We need to radically reduce social and economic inequity, because that's getting worse by the day. The fourth industrial revolutions give us a lot of tools, but also a lot of new challenges. But some of the tools can be very useful in helping us solve our problems. But while we're doing it, we will have to deal with increasing extreme weather, which also means crop failures and problems for hundreds of millions of people trying to survive. We're in the middle of an ongoing mass extinction, as you all are aware. And all of these stresses are bringing increasing social tensions, which already is clear, for instance, in the way politics is run, both in the United States, in Europe, and for instance, the pressure from climate refugees, which is somehow changing the dynamics of societies. Now, maybe, just maybe, the global metamorphosis could start with the Amazon. Mind you, the situation in the Amazon is terrible. The situation in Brazil is terrible. It's a big mess. So we're in the depth of problems there, politically, socially, economically, ecologically. However, of the tipping points that you have just seen on that map, those 9 tipping points, this is the only one that we as humans can directly and actively turn around. We obviously can't do something directly to stop the Arctic sea ice from melting, or the permafrost from melting, for instance, or the bleaching of the coral reefs. But if we would regenerate the forests and reforest large areas, we could turn this around. And what we're looking at, the Amazon forest, is actually a system that's not just a forest without people. We, as in the West, we always think of nature as something separate from people, but it's not. There it's not. The people of the Amazon are the guardians, are the stewards of that forest and have been enriching that forest for millennia. Actually, large parts are basically a food forest. So our chance lies in the integration of ancient and modern science and knowledge to get to a solution. But the area is vast, the challenges are enormous, so the only way it could work is by connecting the whole world around the love for the forest, which is indeed the heart and the lungs of our planet. Our planet, I see it as a living organism with organs, and the Amazon is one of the most crucial organs, working as both the heart and the lungs of our planet. If you breathe in now, 8 out of 100 molecules of oxygen you just have been breathing in have been produced by the Amazon. So suppose we get this done and we can turn things around in the Amazon, we actually have a pilot project of an enormous size to show an ecological civilization is possible. So here's an article from Carlos Nobre and Thomas Lovejoy, two eminent scientists whom part of the slides on this show are actually from Carlos Nobre. And they have come up with the science that says, listen, we're closing in on a tipping point where the forest will start dying back by itself. They say it's somewhere between 20 and 25%. Once that's cut, it will die back by itself. We are at 18%. And personally, how I see it is that even if we wouldn't cut a tree today, it would probably die back already in the situation as it is. They also give the solution in two broad lines: forest restoration and a forest bioeconomy, and we'll get to that. But let's first go to this amazing Amazon forest. It only exists because it keeps itself alive. It is something that is nurturing itself. It creates its own weather system. It's an evolutionary wonder since 60 million years, and it has an incredibly efficient way of recycling both the waters, which are over its head, which rain down and which evaporate again, and the nutrients in the forest, because basically it's, on the whole, it's on lands that are quite nutrient poor, but the few nutrients that are there are recycled by the forest time and again. It is the most biodiverse area in the world, and it has been maintained and enriched for millennia now by the indigenous people. And as you all know, things are going completely pear-shaped now. There are, especially under the current Brazilian government, deforestation is up. Large parts are put on fire. And we see already this century increased droughts and floods. The dry season has been extended, especially on the west and south side, by about a month. And that gets into the range where the tree mortality is going up quickly, because the tree species that have been evolving over the last 60 million years or so are used to being rained upon for many more months, and so they start to die back. A study that just came out last month showed that probably the forest is no longer servicing us with carbon sequestration. While the estimate was that 2 decades ago, the amount of carbon that was sequestered by the forest on a yearly basis was something to the tune of what an economy the size of Germany or Japan would emit every year. So that's a huge loss in itself. And the biotic pump, this water system of 400 billion trees evaporating water, forming clouds and raining upon itself, and also moisturizing large parts to the west and to the south of it, is starting to falter. Here's a quick map. You can see the red area. This is until 2018, so till the government of Bolsonaro came in power. And you see that especially there's on the south and on the west side, there is huge deforestation of already going on, and that's increasing rapidly at the moment. So, and this tipping point basically means that at some point, if there is not enough precipitation, many tree species will die out. They dry up, they fall down, and other species that are more savanna type come in their place. And the problem with this conversion is also that those dead trees are they are fuel for fires. So the Amazon is now at a point where it soon will start in a self-amplifying vicious circle of dieback and dry out, which would take anywhere between 3 to 6 decades to be completely wiped out, probably, once this process is irreversible. Which would mean that, first of all, the whole of South America, large parts of South America would dry out completely. A disaster for the people who live there. A disaster for the world food situation, because South America is one of the great food baskets of the world. But also rain patterns over North America would actually change, especially over the Midwest and the West, which means that also the food growing capacity of the United States would be severely hampered. Well, you can imagine the global famines and food price situations that would happen if that would happen. It would be a complete disaster. And these mega fires would release such an enormous quantity of CO2 into the atmosphere, which would be equal to something up to 8, maybe 10 years of global total emissions right now. Basically, we can kiss the Paris goals goodbye. So the question is, can we avoid the Amazon tipping point? And my answer is probably yes, but only if we come together globally to do this now. It requires us to think at a scale that is usually almost impossible. And it means disruptive solutions at a scale of the problem. Imagine you would have to change something the size of the United States or Europe within a couple of years, the structure of the economy. And you think, well, forget it, that's not going to work. Well, I think it's possible. But it would mean we need to regenerate the forests, regenerate the communities that are there, regenerate the existing economy and upscaling it and giving it new tools. The stewards of this transition must be the indigenous peoples. Because they live in a paradigm that is fit for the time to come if we get through this, because they see themselves as part of nature. They are not outside of it. Of course, we are not outside of it. If you don't breathe for 3 minutes, the oxygen, which was made by cyanobacteria, algae, and forests, if you would be for 3 minutes without it, you would die. So you're actually part of nature, even while you don't realize it. They understand. They understand it much deeper and better than we do. Okay, I'm having a problem getting to the next slide. Oh, wait, 1 second. Yeah. So what needs to happen in order to get this all done in pretty short time? Basically, we have a decade to get this process of regeneration going. The first one is we need large finance to regenerate the forest. I'll come to that soon. The second one is at COP26, it must be clear that carbon sequestration through reforestation must be paid for. If you draw down carbon from the atmosphere, then that needs payment. And there are simple systems these days with satellite monitoring that you could actually you could actually have a very relatively simple system of measuring the increase in vegetation. So it wouldn't be too complicated to get this done. We need to involve and activate the climate youth around the world. Right now, they're protesting, they're scared as hell, and they should be. But they are protesting against the disaster. They have not found something to hope for where the turnaround can be. And this could be it. We have to listen to the indigenous people, to the indigenous leaders. They will show us the connections. We need to reconnect to nature, to each other, and they understand this much deeper than we do. We have to embrace and design a new economy which is designed with nature at its core. And we need to embrace a hopeful vision of the future, because just running away from the disasters that we all sense are coming is not enough drive to get us where we need to go. We need to head and design and design an ecological civilization that needs to emerge from our common consciousness, our common drive. Okay, so then, of course, the big thing is how? Well, a major first start would be we, the world, get the money together to pay 1 million people in the area to restore the damage and create a bioeconomy based on the living forests. There's about 35 million people living in the Amazon forest. 30 million or so live in the cities. Somewhere between 2 and 3 million people live basically in smaller communities on riverbanks in the Amazon forest. And if we would engage them and give them money to start reforesting it, the effect would be pretty fast. The cost would be roughly $1 billion per month. With the current monies that economies like the EU and the US are putting in to offset the problems of COVID, the COVID of the pandemic, that would be peanuts. And slowly, after a few years, those costs would go down, because we will see later that the bioeconomy, once it gets to scale, will generate more than enough income for the people of the Amazon to have a good life and to make enough income. So the US and the EU need to put up the starting money. And in fact, Biden has already told that he was having a bag of 20 billion. And in fact, there was an Amazon fund basically paid by Germany and Norway, which before Bolsonaro was 1 billion per year, I think 1 or 2 billion, not sure. Anyway, so the money, if we get the money there, that will not be the problem. And then the reforestation should slowly be paid by the CO2 that the new trees are sequestering, because the forest will help offsetting and slowing down the climate crisis. So what are the main steps to start this enormous process? Well, start financing, start hiring these 1 million people, and of course, stop the destruction. We need a complete moratorium on deforestation and other measures. The details are in the plan. Then, of course, start the reforestation, the regeneration, and including that, grow a lot of agroforests, food forests, basically the system of permaculture that was already there, and enhance it. We need to make these communities that are there resilient and invest in the bioeconomy. Basically, it means we need to connect them through satellite internet if they want to. Obviously, it's something that they have to decide to want. and that's each community for themselves. But basically, we would, if they want to, we link them to the internet and an Amazon platform where they could get all kinds of services, communication, etc. Okay, once this is all, this groundwork is done, we can grow and structure the bioeconomy more. And the most exciting step comes after that, and that is what is called Amazonia 4.0, which is basically the fourth industrial revolution centered around nature's intelligence. Okay, the basis is already here. 47% of the Amazon is legally protected. Unfortunately, it's not very well enforced, as you are well aware. But half of it is already protected, and a lot of the rest is actually land that belongs to governments, which could be somehow inserted into this project without too much trouble. And now I'll give you the big economic reasons, because that is one of the main persuasive answers for the politicians and the people who think only money. Here is a calculation that Carlos Nobre did, and you see that right now there's 240,000 square kilometers used in the Amazon for meat and soybeans, basically reaping 14.5 billion Brazilian reais per year, which is 3.8 billion euros, or 4.6 billion US dollars, more or less, which means that the average earnings per hectare per year is 150 euros or $180. If you compare that to the 4,000 square kilometers in agroforestry systems that are there right now, they reap a value of 5.1 billion reais. This is 2019 figures, equaling 1.3 billion, as you can see, in euros, 1.6 in US dollars. That is the hectare price. The gains per hectare is 20 times higher than the meat and soybeans. There was one climate scientist or an Amazon scientist saying that putting cows in the Amazon is equal to burning a Renaissance painting to cook a meal. It's complete ridiculous from any point of view. So here you see the bioeconomy on one side with acai and cacao, to name just two examples, versus the destructive and low earning economies of soy and cattle. And if you see here, acai, which is has been growing as a product in the Amazon, this is all just for Brazil, but of course the other countries are important as well. And you see that just in Brazil, 300,000 people are making a living out of acai better than when they work on ranches. And this is with the forest standing. But the Amazon right now, we know that has at least 3,000 edible fruits, leaves, roots, nuts, and seeds, and even more medical plants and substances. So this is just the start. Only acai and a few products bring this in. But once we are full steam, the gain is going to be much higher. And then we come to Amazonia 4.0, because there are so many possibilities to upgrade this whole thing, this economy, with much more products which are much more valuable. For cosmetics, for pharmaceuticals, and other substances. Okay, here you have a quick picture of the spread of settlements in the Amazon, cities, rural settlements, indigenous communities. There's a couple of thousand of them. And the area is enormous, and the distances are enormous, as I'm sure many of you have been there. But we can connect them, if we connect them via satellite internet, to an Amazon platform which offers education, e-healthcare, e-commerce, e-banking, many services that makes them connect to this whole possibility of the bioeconomy. And then this last step, there it gets really exciting. Basically, the inventions of the fourth industrial revolution will merge with the biodiversity of the Amazon forest. I think COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how quick DNA sequencing has helped bringing a vaccine online, probably 5 to 10 times faster than ever before. And this was just one possibility of how fast this can work. And it was about DNA sequencing, RNA sequencing. Well, here is just one example of materials that can come from the Amazon by simply studying the forests. We have studied only a very small part of the species that are there. I think somebody just told me once that an Ashwa child in Ecuador, the Ashwa tribe, a child learns to distinguish about 250 types of bees with different types of honeys having different types of qualities. Imagine what possibilities there are there. Another project that's underway, the Earth Biogenome Project, is basically sequencing all the species around the world. And then in the Amazon, there is the most work as it is the most biodiverse place on Earth. And from there, we can develop new medicines against infectious or inherited diseases, drugs that will maybe slow or reverse aging. We can generate new biomaterials coming from looking at nature's solutions. Okay, this is quite a complex schedule that Carlos Nobre and his brother Ismael Nobre have brought up. But basically, it's in the middle are the social values that are a new culture and a new ecological civilization should adhere to, which is equitability and fairness and sharing of benefits, which is harnessing nature's values, which is socially inclusive and diverse, and everything needs to be equal, ecologically sound, obviously. So this Amazon 4.0 will need a lot of research and development on the ground in the forest, in those communities. So actually they will make a jump from being some of the most remote areas in the world to some of the advanced parts of the world economy. Okay, the infrastructure will build, and then we'll map the possibilities of the biological possibilities of all these species. Well, there's two I want to mention quickly. By studying the bum of a firefly, a group of scientists have found out how to improve the reflection of LED lighting by 15%. There are buildings now that incorporate structures found in termite mounds in order to cool them with less energy. So I'll just stop there. But from all these possibilities, we will see new advanced companies working together with the indigenous people to actually make nature a force for good and create a sustainable new bioeconomy. So if we're going to pull this off, what does it mean? First, we need indigenous and other ambassadors with teams in the 9 Amazon countries. Ambassadors to talk to the US government and the European Union and European countries and to China. Local youths, NGOs, and global climate activists, especially the global youth climate movement, and help them design this future of the Amazon. And we need a very smart IT team to design this online presence and this Amazon network platform to roll out an instrument where all these people in the Amazon and everybody, all the stakeholders can connect to exchange information, to help each other, but also to do trade and other things. We need groups of scientists working with communities and companies to extend this bioeconomy, especially in this Amazonia 4.0 revolution. And of course, we need daring joint ventures of entrepreneurs who want to start Amazonia 4.0 projects. And we need a support team to get this whole thing organized with some startup finance. So how will you join the Great Turning? Will the way our species react to this be also the trigger, bring out the passion and the vision for us to turn situation on this planet around? Here are two creatures that I am very much linked to. It's a little bugger I am linked to who lives in a favela in Rio. And the jaguar has always been in my conscious since I was 6 years old. Thank you very much. And I hope you have some questions after this presentation.
Okay, Rob, thank you so much. Let me just, everybody just, mute themselves. I see some people are not muted, just so I don't want to have background noise, if you can avoid it. So obviously, the first kind of, I think it's a great plan. It does feel like what has to happen. I think everyone, I'd be surprised people don't agree. But obviously the political impediments seem just enormous. And we were talking about Brazil and the political climate there is like totally against this. And the people who are running, this country, that country, and some of the other countries have total short time, pinhead ideals, and are just trying to, create as much cash to keep themselves in power and so on. So what would be, I mean, you think it would require kind of a people's movement? What would be the dynamics of actually changing that or turning it around?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's probably a key question. Of course, I hope that at the end of this year, there will be elections in Brazil, and at the end of this year, and in 2022, Brazil sees a different movement. There is a lot of chaos going on there, so I think it's very difficult to predict what's going on. Let me first see some of the bright lights, because in Colombia and the new government of Bolivia, I'm sure we can get a good year. In Ecuador, the movement, and in Peru also, the local movements of the indigenous people and is pretty strong. So there's a couple of countries where I think there are possibilities, but the big, the 800-pound gorilla is obviously Brazil. Now, the one thing that I know about Brazil in general, but also especially about this government, is money talks. And actually yesterday, Salles, this terrible minister of the environment, actually said that he would guarantee to reduce deforestation by 40% if Biden would send him $1 billion check. Now, it's at that transactional level that probably some good diplomats have to talk to these people to slow down the destruction, because that's the first thing that needs to happen, obviously. Getting this project up to steam will not be a matter of weeks. I think it needs about 2 years to get the groundwork completely done, provided the resources are there. So I think by 2 years from now, I hope the political situation will be better. And I think we also need to engage, for instance, the farmers there, and actually tell them, listen, you can make more money now. So stop thinking cows, think money. And we can actually give you some possibilities. So maybe they prick up their ears. I don't know.
Okay, cool. Who's got a question?
I have a quick question, actually. Hey, I'm just wondering about the use of the blockchain. and this whole phenomenon around NFTs, and maybe somehow incentivizing people to put money towards, like helping and protecting the rainforest, the Amazon. So any ideas on the blockchain and maybe the use of NFT technology for incentives for people all around the world to pitch in and support the support of this saving the Amazon?
Yes, thank you. If you would dive in to the plan a little bit, you'd see that blockchain and decentralized autonomous organizations based on blockchain, and people quite often think with blockchain about financial transaction, but actually basically the whole contracting cycle and etc. would be incredibly helpful. So I think one of the, I'm not an IT guy, but the people who would design this Amazon platform will probably think of blockchain as a foundation for a lot of transactions. Especially what you see right now is that there's still a lot of money, cash money transactions in the Amazon, which is actually quite dangerous because you have to go somewhere, sometimes hundreds of kilometers by boat over a river, and there are pirates on rivers in the Amazon. So if you get a sort of a transaction system where I buy acai, 100 kilo for acai from you, and the blockchain basically parks that money because I already paid it, and it releases the moment I get the acai, it would be very, very useful. But that is just one very small aspect of what can be used. So yes, absolutely.
I don't know who made that comment, but I'm curious if they have more ideas or insight into NFTs and how they could be used in this.
Yeah, so I made that comment, and basically I've been researching it a lot, and I've been obviously investing in it in crypto space, but I've been really looking into how can we use this blockchain, but specifically NFTs, where maybe someone, like you can buy land for conservation purposes, and then you can incentivize people to actually own fractions of the land. So, but it's complicated in terms of like how I would describe it right now, because I'm not so well versed on the mechanics. But basically, you can incentivize people around the world to almost like the same way people buy a token that that they believe in, and the price goes up, and people own these tokens. You can have people own these tokens, and they're owning a part of saving the Amazon. So it's actually kind of like this ingenious idea to have people's incentives align to save the Amazon.
Yeah, brilliant. I think I think it will be an essential element of the total architecture. Please see this plan as an umbrella under which hundreds, if not thousands, of projects need to be designed. And some of the foundational projects, like you were talking about with blockchain and possibilities of everybody buying into the regeneration, I think is fundamental. But what it would mean is that you start a blockchain team with other people in order to come up with these solutions.
Let's go to Angela Del Sol. She's got her hand raised. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Angela.
You pop back in?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everyone. How's everything going? So I actually just came back from South America. I've been working there on reforestation projects with the Indigenous. I find your research to be quite interesting, and basically what we've known for many years, and I always wonder, how can we actually get this message across to the masses? Just a few comments. I think it's really important to emphasize collaboration, because there's a lot of organizations that are already in the region and that are already working. And as you know, working on nonprofits and in this sector, all of these organizations are kind of fighting for the same funding, fighting for the same attention of the world. And what I've noticed is that the more we continue to act as this separate entity, the harder it's going to get the message across. And the project that you just shared, it's quite large, and it requires all hands on deck.
Yes.
And just something to consider is, I don't know how far away are you in your research of, the key players in the region, key players when it comes to organizations, activists, people that are doing advocacy work and so forth, and kind of organizing it in a way that everything can flow together, perhaps doing a summit where all of us can get together and really brainstorm, put our egos to the side and get to work. Because what I've been seeing for the past now almost 7 years is, meetings after meetings and sharing after sharing, and the situation in the Amazon is getting pretty dire. Another thing that is important to emphasize is that it's not only grazing of cattle that's actually destroying the Amazon. Is right now the gas prices have gone up so much in Peru and Brazil that people are actually have to cut the trees to burn fossil fuels, to run their boats, to run their cars. So when we start, if we really are being diligent about our research, we have to go to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem, as we all know, is the corruption that we have in these countries, where, the farmers are not necessarily the bad guys; they're just surviving. So I think it's important to understand that unless we give them an alternative, they're gonna continue cutting the trees because they need to eat and they need to feed themselves.
Yes,
So
let me, I really have to interrupt you because you have been pointing me 4 points now, and if I want to react to them, all of them, but thank you very much. And thank you for your passion, because I realize that, that all of what you're saying is incredibly important. Let me start with one point that you mentioned, for somehow I forgot in my presentation. What started this whole thing, that was a dream in which I saw a large ceremonial gathering in the Amazon, achieved by the indigenous elders and by indigenous youths, which would be a sort of a healing and a sort of a catharsis and a healing, and in order to get rid of these egos and all these problematic things that everybody is fighting for the same bone, and that out of that would come a sort of a release of energy of working together, because we're all working for the same thing. So that I've actually been in the Amazon in 2019 already, making bookings and everything, but I couldn't get the money together. So so that gathering is very important, and it's very important that it's led by the indigenous chiefs. If you look at what I mean with these Amazon network platforms, is that all these, I have located around 1,000 projects so far, and many of them are mentioned in the document already. So basically we would need a team that maps all of that, contacts all of them, and asks them to get into that platform. And then through that platform, we will get money to them, because first of all, we're going to hire 1 million people. Not at ridiculous salaries, obviously, but for substantial for the Amazon. The second thing is we would start combining, we would start paying people and areas for the sequestration of carbon, which means the increase of vegetation. So that cutting down trees is not a very a good value. Actually, at a price of around $10 per ton of CO2 sequestered, you're probably already looking at thousands of dollars per hectare per year that would flow into a certain area. So it would be economically completely unwise to start cutting down trees. The whole tipping point in the economy would be paying for sequestration. And with the corruption, I think when we're talking about the blockchain platform, for instance, I think one of the aspects that I think would be very important would be 100% online transparency. Right now, we all know Bitcoin is something mysterious and nobody can track whatever is going on. We should do the opposite. Make the blockchain completely transparent up to the point where it goes into somebody's blockchain account. From there, they can do whatever what they like, but follow the money if we want to do that. Just look online, click, and see all the transactions going everywhere.
So I don't mean to interrupt. So I'm actually
Please.
working on a project like that right now. So again, what I want to emphasize is that these solutions are already there. And because
Sure.
we're running out of time, we just need to link all of the connections. I'm
Please
working on a project called BitGreen. We actually just migrated to the Substrate framework, which is under Polkadot, which is the sister of Ethereum. And basically what we're trying to be is the world's leading impact ledger, meaning that all organizations, nonprofits can measure their impact, and we're going to create a financial system with our coin, with BG, to encourage good action. So we have a case study in the Philippines right now. For instance, I don't know if you know this, but Asia, the rivers and the waters of Asia are the most contaminated by plastic. Yeah. So you have the lower caste of the society picking up these bottles. Some entrepreneurs are paying them with rice, with coins, and are trying to continue to collect these bottles that are becoming bricks to build houses. And it's it's a new trend in the Philippines. Now, it's really hard to track how many people are benefiting from picking up these bottles and paying them. So we're going to start paying them with BitG, and actually it's also a way to start banking their unbanked, because it's really beautiful, all of these ideas when they're like super high level, but we need to ground them into the fact that, okay, most of these people that we're trying to bank, they don't have internet, they don't have phones, they don't have these resources. So it's really important that we get super grounded into the reality of all of these millions of people that because the idea is fantastic, but I think that we must always move from our limitations backwards, because as a pioneer spirit and an innovator, I dream super high. But what I've learned these past years working directly with the communities is that we really need to understand their challenges. And I'd rather have 500 people where we have the funding to give a few community leaders a few phones, or create some sort of mesh network, have their internet, have a special point where everyone can go in and cash in, versus then an idealistic idea to think that everyone will have a phone to jump on the wallet and to get in the, because there's limitations of education, there's limitations of language. So I'm bringing all of this to your awareness and everyone else's awareness to just understand how, because of the urgency of the climate emergency, how we have to start grounding these solutions into the real people that are being the most affected by climate. Thank you so
Angela,
much.
Thank you so much for, and all of it, what you're saying is relevant. Listen, I have a few ideas about how we could solve some of these problems. But I think what is more important than me thinking or giving you answers is, please come on board and let's all have this team of a blockchain team. I actually talked to the man who was, I'm not sure if he still is, but he was in charge of the Starlink program that Musk is rolling out. Where basically with a combination of solar panels, we could give any community in the Amazon access to the internet through Starlink within a couple of months. And that would give everybody the possibility to link up to digital financing and stuff like that. So that would be definitely a key element to roll that out. And there should be a team for that. So I would love to hear more about BitGreen. Please enlighten me and contact me after this.
Rob, put your email down in the chat so people have it.
Yeah. It's also in, if you can't find it now, it's also in the plan, and also my WhatsApp. So you're most welcome. We have to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Who else has a question?
What is the name of the internet company? Oh, Starlink. It's called Starlink. I'll give you some ideas. I haven't. I've just talked to the manager who was in charge of it, and he actually gave me a ballpark idea what it would cost. And he said it was about $20 million to get the basically the signal to everybody. The biggest problem was they did some tests The biggest problem was getting the material on the ground, keep it intact. And there were some issues there. But anyway, there are possibilities there.
So I've noticed that a couple new people just entered. I think that might be because I kind of was incoherent around the time of this call. But Rob, we can have this discussion, and Rob, if a few more people join, maybe you'll run through the presentation again for the new people, in a half hour or something like that.
Okay, hello everybody. Sorry, there was a bit of confusion about the time. It probably had something to do with daylight saving times and stuff like that. But it is what it is. We started an hour ago, but I'm perfectly happy to stay around and even give a new presentation in half an hour or so.
Okay, so David, you have a question, or you just have a thumbs up? Oh, you're muted. I'm gonna unmute you.
Hello?
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, Rob, I think you have the basis for a very, very good plan. The economics look promising. And as Daniel pointed out earlier, I too am concerned about the political situation in Brazil. But I think there are some, I think the winds are changing from what I can see. I think it was you that told me a little while ago that 21 of the 26 governors in Brazil, 21 of the 26 state governors have written to Joe Biden asking for his help in saving the Amazon. I think that's very, very positive, and I think we need to jump all over that and find a way to capitalize on that momentum, because whether we like it or not, politics are going to be very important in this struggle. But the fact that Joe Biden himself has committed $20 billion to this cause, to saving the Amazon, I think also is very, very positive.
Yeah, thank you, David, for reminding it. There's huge force in the right direction, and so in that sense, we shouldn't despair. And as you said, there was recently a poll in Brazil, and I think about 85 or 90% of people said that they wanted the Amazon to be protected. So the Bolsonaro government is completely out of sync of what is happening on the ground, and actually there is a team. I have sent them a mail twice, but they haven't answered. But there is a team in Biden's, let's say, climate change, what do you call it, groups or something like that. I forgot the name right now, but they are specifically focusing on the situation in the Amazon. So somehow we need to get in contact with them and say hi.
Right.
Yeah, anybody else want to ask a question? Matt Renner, I'm curious from the climate mobilization perspective, if this resonates, or how you would approach such a situation. You're still with us? No, I'm just recording. Okay, anybody else? And maybe it's such a big plan, it's almost hard to figure out where to approach it. I mean, I guess we could ask you, how far along are you? I mean, what have you been doing in terms of trying to having written the plan? What have you been doing to try to put it into action up till now?
Actually, I've been talking to quite a lot of people, and I think they listened politely and thought, probably without saying it out loud, it's too big. My answer every time was, anything less won't help the situation. You have to make it this big in order to make the turnaround. And I don't see it as a plan as such. I see it as a catalyzer and a system integration of what's already there. And I must say that one of the things that I've also noticed, and it also has to do with the NGOs, that there are people that have been fighting for decades in the Amazon and everywhere, actually in the whole world, in terms of nature preservation, and they're tired because they had some tactical successes, but on the whole, they know they're losing. And so, and that somehow that sadness is preventing them from opening up to something, because they said, listen, we tried something that was much smaller and we didn't succeed. So why the hell would you think that something this size would work? My answer is, well, it better work, because something smaller is simply not going to help. If the Amazon goes, once it's over the tipping point, it will die out by itself. The world food situation will be disarrayed. The world climate will get such an extra aftershock, jolted into extra heating, that you can kiss your ass goodbye. So it's not a matter of whether it's feasible. It's not feasible not to do it.
And what kind of, I mean, to contact the indigenous tribes, my understanding is that they've been, or indigenous communities, they've actually been networking with each other more and more. So maybe it's easier now to create like a united front there. Like what's the situation with these indigenous communities now?
Honestly, I don't have a lot of contacts right now there. But I'm sure it would be possible to re-engage at some point. Right now, they're fighting the fight of their lives. I mean, they're fighting against miners. They're fighting against people invading their territories. They're fighting against COVID. I mean, it's very difficult to focus on the long haul if you don't know if you're going to live tomorrow. So right now, I don't think there is a lot of space right now to open up to this plan. But I hope and guess that once we get a little traction with this plan, people can start to relax a little bit, because they're under siege.
With the already presumed like 2 degrees Celsius warming, if that happens, doesn't that also tip the Amazon over by itself, like at a higher heat?
Carlos Nobre says that it's probably somewhere in the ballpark of 3 degrees. So yes, we might win this battle, and then 2 or 3 decades later, we're still going to lose it. But I think the whole point, of course, of doing this battle in the Amazon is not just the preservation of the Amazon. It's also for humanity to wrap its head around the possibility of actually becoming sustainable. Because right now, everybody is sort of dragging their feet. Yeah, we need to decarbonize. Yeah, I know. But that's not obviously not the way we're going to win this one.
I mean, I know some people believe that. Well, actually, I'm going to let Michael has a hand up. Michael, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thanks, Ray. I mean, really enjoy the vision behind it, and the scope of this project is huge. And I just wonder how much thought you've given to the objection and opposition you would have to this in terms of, the vested economic interests and the power players and the politics behind it, and how you envisage sort of approaching that. I mean, I really enjoyed what Angela said about this collaboration, and that would need to happen at the highest level, because there's a transformation here in consciousness as well that needs to happen in terms of a whole new approach to the Amazon and the value of that. And you've mentioned that in your presentation. So in terms of this opposition and objection to this, because of the economic interest, the global meat market and the agenda behind that, what's your approach to that?
I understand your question. Thank you. It's a very good one, and it's a very difficult one, obviously. Actually, I would like to. I'm thinking about something that Daniel Pinchbeck wrote, and that is, most people are okay, but you have a couple of bastards there that are sort of psychopaths that really make a lot of mess. And we know one. There's one in Brasilia. There recently one left Washington for Miami, and so while we can't persuade everyone, I think with a combination of looking at in their eyes and saying, listen, this is about the future of your children. A combination also, the economic argument, listen, the transformation will actually bring more wealth to your area. And for instance, in Curitiba, that's a place, no, sorry, Cuiabá, it's a place south of the Amazon, Mato Grosso. And you see the temperatures have already touched in the hot months 50 C. At some point, the cows are going to die. And at some point, they really realize, they already realize, I've talked to people who talk to these conservative fundamentalist Christian farmers, but they already realize that the rivers are getting drier and the temperature is heating up and the grass is doing worse. They understand. They just don't want to admit it. So a similar thing is going on in the United States, of course. So we'll have to deal with that, but it's piecemeal and it's going to be a lot of work. But I think most people can be convinced. And if you look at the local politics, for instance, in the governments, the municipalities of the Amazon, you see that maybe half of them, there are already mayors and what have you, who would you could check them into this thing. There would be resistance in some parts, but let's do it. This is maybe a bad sentence to use, but let's start with a coalition of the willing. And as David said, there were 20 or 21 of the 26 governors of states in Brazil. They sent a letter to Biden, come please help. So I think we can find a coalition of the willing to get this plan on the ground.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. It's just also just to be aware of not to approach this with too much naivety. I mean, I love what Angela was saying about working from the bottom up, getting involved with the communities, understanding their needs and what can be done from their side, but also from the top and how, you can get the buy-in from influential people that can also make a difference at that economic and political level, because that supply chain's got quite a bit of momentum, in terms of the deforestation and the cattle farms and the whole meat market. So it's a large undertaking, and that would be a really important part of the strategy, the top down too.
Oh, yes. Basically, you have to approach it from all sides. Listen, they're not my friends, but BlackRock the other day gave a paper where it basically said to all its investors, now there's a lot of greenwashing here, but that I think by 2025, you better have a plan to become carbon zero or you're out of the investment of our investment loop. And actually something like JBS, the largest meat company in the world, previously run by crooks, but I think they're in jail or they got a carbon zero plan. Now I don't trust them, I don't buy them, but even they somehow already have to move in that direction.
Yes, great, thanks, Ray.
Yeah, I guess, Rob, that was the other question I was going to ask a little bit was can this plan to create like this sort of ecologically based economy actually, is it something that's even doable under the sort of capitalist market system? Yesterday I did a talk with Peter Joseph, who was the guy who did the Zeitgeist movement, and he wrote a book called The New Human Rights Movement. And he basically argues that the sort of capitalist structure with these sort of markets that require constant growth, economically, it's just inimical with, you can't have that and have a sustainable system, It looks like your plan is more to incorporate the market economy metrics into this initiative.
Well, obviously my idea about it is different than the capitalists' ones. I don't think, I think we need to get everybody involved. So if you straight out say, well, sorry, this can't be done under capitalism, I think we just cut off $20 billion from Washington. So we have to be a little bit tactical there. In the end, I am personally, I'm teaching in climate groups, Kate Raworth's donut model. economics model. And I think that would be something that would definitely be part of the whole structure of rolling this out. Again, it's a tipping balance. At some point, we need to go that way. If you look at the blockchain thing, that probably will underpin the whole infrastructure. Basically, you're putting down, you're putting up a completely new financial infrastructure that is equitable and much less or even non-corruptible. So at some point, you're going to have the shift simply away from a rigged system, which obviously capitalism is. But it's not an answer to your question in the sense when can we do it under the system? I would say if I have to answer it straight away, the answer is no.
Yeah, fair enough.
So let's hope it collapses soon. I mean, what's happening right now is pretty funny.
Dita, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm quite fascinated by what just came up in the conversation about, yeah, whether it's possible or even sustainable to use the tools of capitalism to prevent the collapse of an ecosystem. And what came to mind is that it's a project that, in my view, is really successful, and it's not outside of capitalism, but it has come to happen kind of sort of independently of it. It's in the state of Andhra Pradesh in the southeast of India. It's a very large area, and in about, I think it's less than 10 years, with some very particular nodal interventions about the use of land and land access, they basically have turned around, they have more or less stopped using any chemical products in their agriculture. They have reverted a lot of the social inequalities, and the climate, actually the actual climate, not only the political one, has changed. And the investment is almost nothing. So their project is based on what they call zero budget natural farming. And I would really recommend having a look at it. It's just, it's mind blowing really. And it's just some really, yeah, it's a lot of community work, but I think it pays off on the long term. I think it's more efficient than a top-down approach, which to some degree this is how it feels. I haven't read the document yet, so I'm sure there's lots of things that are not how I perceive them from this talk. But it suddenly felt, oh, this feels really like something that we are putting on the Amazon instead of something coming from it. And again, I'm really eager to read the document, so I would love to have a chat after that as well.
Dita, please share that project in Andhra Pradesh. I'd love to hear from it. I'm sure other ones want to. Let me just say that while it starts from big bags of money coming from Washington and the EU to get to the transformation, the idea is to get this money into the hands of a million people who will have as their start of it. Actually, there's a complete package that they will learn how to sort of become entrepreneurs in the bioeconomy, do a permaculture, learn all kinds of new techniques already. They know it, etc., to find their place in that new ecosystem. So basically, it's almost a universal basic income type of thing, although some work needs to be done. So that somehow should have a bottom-up effect, especially when it's coupled to measuring the vegetation that is happening in those areas. So I hope that, well, yeah, we have to start somewhere, but I hope at some point that will take over that new system.
Yeah, so maybe just what I found quite, for me, and this is again, this is not the truth, this is just my perception. One key aspect of that project, which I think is the key to the success, was that there was no financial reward for the farmers. So they really had to turn around and be able to live from their land without any input. And they were poor farmers, not, they couldn't, most of them were like, oh, how do we do this? And it just kind of, it worked. And the guy that kind of was behind the whole idea, he really had to fight for that there was no subsidies and there was no payment for the transition time. And so if there were subsidies, anything else that comes along that can give the farmer more money, they will do that. So in this case, they were not dependent on the money, they were really dependent on getting their land together. And I think that was the secret for it to actually establish and actually now be sustainable.
Sounds brilliant.
Yeah.
I've seen the link, thank you.
Somebody asked on the chat, Rob, about how if they wanted to help fund your plan. We, obviously some people, contributed to this. I think we're going to pass that money on to this indigenous community that you mentioned. But I mean, do you have? Do you need money in any particular way, or is it more about kind of that's not really the essence right now? It's just getting this out into sort of pitching it to people and getting finding the right backing.
Well, I guess it would be good to have some sort of a foundation somewhere that could support this. And for instance, turning the plan into first of all into websites and social media activity, and starting on that platform probably would be very helpful if the money would come in. Yes, for sure. But again, it's an umbrella project, so I'd rather have some people who are used to doing this kind of thing come together and say, what about this structure? Let's decide on a legal and financial structure to do this startup. I mean, I've set up many companies in my life, so it's not a very big thing. You probably would have to start 9 regional companies or foundations in the countries, and a central one probably in Europe or the United States to get the funding flowing. But we can talk about it.
So what are kind of like for you? What are the immediate next steps?
Well, the first one would be, as far as I'm concerned, is that people would offer their services to start with their specific expertise to work on some teams. So I hear a team like Dita comes up with a wonderful project which has been very successful in Andhra Pradesh. I hear something from BitGreen. Definitely there needs to be some work. I think the IT. The Amazon platform is one thing. Then we need ambassadors to talk to guys like, Starlink is a Elon Musk project. Somebody needs to talk to him and say, listen, can you do your thing there, etc. So we would have to have teams first. It would be an ecosystem of teams that would start at different, starting to eat at the different parts of the pie, let's say. And yeah, of course, it would be helpful if there would be some money to do some basic stuff, but it wouldn't have to be a lot, because basically in the beginning it would be just architecture of the system.
Cool. Well, I mean, I don't see many more questions, so maybe
you should round it off.
Yeah, and I know maybe if people who joined want to hear him go through the proposal again, maybe just let us know in the chat if there's enough of you that makes it worthwhile. And if not, the chat is recorded. I just put it up on my Facebook, so it'll stay there, but also I'll send it out to my people on my newsletter. But I thought it was a really great presentation, and I personally think it's very important to, as people are still coming in.
Something it starts at 8 o'clock.
I'll leave you on then, Rob. You take it over. You host, and you can talk to the people for the next half hour, and then do the if more people pop on in half an hour, just do the whole thing again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Danielle. I guess we will take it a bit further after this one.
Yeah, exactly.
And Michael, you're still having a question or remark?
No, I think that's just his hand up, held up from before.
Oh, okay.
Maybe run through a little bit of the actual, document, because I know there's like trillions of links and so on there. Maybe that's a useful use of the half hour.
Yeah. Okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a break and get me some water.
Yeah.
And I'll be back in a few minutes.
So yeah, Jason, I think he's going to run through it again, just probably at 1 in case a few more people jump on. In the meantime, yeah, we can have a group discussion around it. But I'm going to jump off because I have other things to do here. But I'm really happy to see so many people turn up today for this.
Okay. This is funny. We get into a situation of a sort of a revolving door in this session. Let's see. I guess some people are leaving because they've come in at this time. Hello, everybody. Can some of you tell me, there was some confusion about the starting times. Who came in thinking it started about half an hour ago?
I wasn't confused. I just got up late, so.
Oh, okay. So basically, okay. How many people have not seen the presentation? I could do a quick rerun, if that would be helpful.
Even for those who have seen it, I think it would be valuable to go through it again in a deeper way.
Okay, is that basically, listen, I can imagine that some have other things to do. You have the details, actually it's in the link of the plan. For those, I've put my email address here, so I'll put that one more time. Thank you, Jochen, for your presence. And I hope we will hear from you and actually many people here to see if we can do this together. I think it's a crucial project for the future of our kids. Okay, so so do you want me to go through the presentation one more?
Yes, please.
All right. Let me see then. Share screen. Share. Start the presentation. Oh, I'm at the end. Okay, you've all seen it now. All right. For a second round, this presentation here is called The Great Turning for the Amazon, The Time Has Come. I work under basically the guidance of my brother and friend, Chief Haru Kuntanawa, who is the leader of the tribe by that name in Acre in Brazil. And I'm guided by the inspiration that Carlos Nobre has given me, an eminent scientist who has been working on the turnaround for the Amazon for a long time. My name is Rob de Laet. I am I'm Dutch, I'm 65, but I'm living in Brazil where I am regenerating a small part of a rainforest, but it's not in the Amazon. Okay, I'll do the quick update that everybody actually here is aware of. We are in huge trouble. We are looking at unprecedented planetary challenges that, if they can go out of control, it will be the largest disaster in the history of humanity, as you all are aware. The lack of awareness and imagination is what holding us back, because once you understand what is happening and also what are the possibilities to get out of it, you would only have one priority, is that get on the bandwagon. We have roughly a decade to transform the way we live on our planet. The transformation that needs to be done is enormous. And the race is on, because if we don't do it fast enough, then the disruption caused by climate change, by the loss of nature, and by all kinds of domino effects in the social and economic sphere will be so much, we will be overwhelmed. This is an article of about 1.5 years old, where a group of eminent scientists from around the world came up and said, listen, we have 9 huge climate tipping points in the globe, in the planetary system already going. They're starting to move, and any one of them is disruptive by itself, and they're all linked and reinforcing each other. So we're really in much more trouble than we thought we were. This is principally the ice sheets that are melting in West and East Antarctica and Greenland. The ocean currents in the Atlantic Oceans are slowing down. Basically, rising sea levels at the east coast of the United States and disrupting, especially winter climate, more and more in Europe. We see the boreal forests burning and getting attacked by pests and losing a lot of trees. And we see the permafrost also melting in those areas, both the Siberian Arctic and the Canadian and Alaskan Arctic, where more and more methane is released from those melting permafrosts. The Great Barrier Reef has died by half. And what we're here for today, the Amazon is at the point of dying back, self-sustained, self-amplifying, if we don't do anything about it. The world is with a lot of trouble trying to get to move into the direction of decarbonization, but a recent calculus of the plans of 75 nations, of the pledges that those 75 nations has made, basically, if you calculate what they have promised, there won't be any emission reduction by 2030. And that's what they pledged. It doesn't mean that they will do it. The minimum reduction that is set in this statistics is that it should be minimum 25%. I think that's on the low side. But there's no way in the current configuration we're going to make that. Last week, an article came out in The Guardian saying that in 2020, the destruction of the world's forest increased again sharply. So basically, we're running and accelerating towards the precipice. And what we need in the next couple of years, in this decade, is the complete transformation of the way we live on this planet. We need an energy and food revolution. We need to move to a circular economy. We need to restore nature and large stretches of degraded land. In total, we're talking about something the size of China or the United States. We need to reduce social and economic inequity, because that's where it's getting worse by the day. There are a lot of revolutionary techniques coming up and coming online, which will actually help us with the transformation if we get our story right. But we will have to do this while extreme weather is increasing, having an effect on people, on crops, on migration. We're in the middle of an ongoing mass extinction, as you know, not in the least in the Amazon forest and in Brazil. And we see increasing social tensions around the world because of all the stress that that is happening to all of us. And now we just have, we are dealing with the pandemic, which of course is a small hors d'oeuvre compared to what we're facing if we are not able to turn the ship around. Now, what if the global metamorphosis, our consciousness will change if we gather around restoring the situation in the Amazon? Is it possible? First of all, it's the only tipping point that I just mentioned that we can actively and directly turn around by regenerating and reforesting the areas that have now been degraded. We humans can do it. We cannot stop the Arctic ice from melting. We cannot stop the bleaching of the coral reefs. We cannot stop the ocean currents from slowing down, but this we can. And the area that we are going to regenerate has actually been a place where humans have been living as part of the forest for centuries, if not millennia, using it and being part of it as a food forest, as a permaculture, huge permaculture garden. Not all of it, but parts of it. And integrating the ancient indigenous knowledge and science and the modern science actually coming together will give us the opportunity to transform the economy of the area with the forest standing. And if we are able to connect the world around the love for this forest, and that's a heartfelt one. We know how people react to the forest fires and the destruction. We know we are somehow connected to the forest. And basically what is happening is we are getting more and more clear that we are connected to the planet and to the fact that the planet is alive and that this is a vital organ of the planet, that if we lose it, we lose the future. And what if we can make this pilot project a big success, and this would be the first large possibility of an ecological civilization to emerge from the ashes of our own destructive behavior. Now, the forest is very near dieback. In fact, okay, this article is from 2019, where Professor Carlos Nobre and Thomas Lovejoy made it very clear that from all kinds of scientific experimentation and modeling and research, they found that it's very near. And once there is the forest goes past this tipping point, it starts dying out by itself, and it's sort of self-amplifying cycles of drying out, trees dying, forest fires, drying more out, etc., etc. And then the forest, something the size of Europe or the United States, could disappear within 3 to 6 decades, Carlos Nobre said. Personally, I think we are at this tipping point, and even if no tree would be cut from tomorrow, but nothing would be done to regenerate it, we probably would see the dieback of the forest anyway, especially because the stress from increasing temperatures from climate change is also pushing at it. Now, the solution broadly is basically 2 pillars: forest restoration on a huge scale, and creating and increasing a forest bioeconomy, and I'll come to that. First, the Amazon forest only exists because it keeps itself alive. It has been there for about 60 million years, and in this evolution of 60 million years, it has learned to effectively recycle water and nutrients in this vast area, raining upon itself, moisturizing itself, and keeping itself alive. It is the most biodiverse area in the world, with an estimate 2.5 million species of insects, plants, trees, and other animals. And it has been maintained and enriched for millennia by indigenous people. And they are really part of the ecosystem. They don't see themselves separate from nature. They are part of nature. They are communicating with nature. They are listening to nature. They are talking to nature. But the forest fires right now are destroying, as you all know, the forest in quick succession. And we see that increasing droughts and floods are taking place. We had 4 droughts since 1998, which were record once in 100-year droughts. And the dry season has extended by a month, especially on the on the east and the south side of the forest, where you see tree mortality is going up. And once a tree falls down, it is basically fuel for new fires. Carbon sequestration is probably reduced to zero already. Probably in the year 2000, the average carbon sequestration of the capacity of the Amazon would be around 600 million tons per year, which would in carbon. So that's times 3.67 in terms of CO2, which would be roughly the same as Germany or Japan emits. But that is already gone. And the biotic pump, this system of recirculating water, evaporating it through 400 billion trees, and re-raining it, and part of that rain going south over Brazil, over Paraguay and Uruguay and Argentina, to moisturize large part of South America, is already faltering, and droughts are increasing. Here you see a map, which is red, where the deforestation was taking place until 2018. It's around 17% that was cleared by then, and now it's increasing. The destruction is increasing under the Bolsonaro government, as we all know. So what happens is that once a certain amount of a forest gets a certain period no rain, which is happening more and more, especially on the southeast side, you see that the trees die back, and they fall down, and they become fuel for fires. And once this cycle is augmenting and self-amplifying, the dieback will start to accelerate and basically trigger mega fires, the worst the world has ever seen. Not only drying out the whole of most part of South America, basically stopping one of the large food baskets of the world to produce, but it also will change the rain patterns over North America, especially over the Midwest and the West, making those driers, especially in the growing seasons. So 2 of the world's food baskets would be affected severely by the dieback of the Amazon, basically triggering enormous famines. Secondly, the megafires would release such an amount of CO2 that the quantities that would be released would make the climate goals of the Paris Accord out of reach. It's as simple as that. So the question is, can we avoid the tipping point in the Amazon? And the answer is probably yes, but only if we come together as humanity to do this now. And we really have to think outside of the box, because we're talking about this huge area and this huge transformation. So it needs a great acceleration of disruptive solutions at the scale of the problem. Mind you, the solutions are already there. It's not a matter of having to invent that much. It is scaling them up and getting them to work. And this should be done under the guidance of the stewards of the forest, because they understand the forest more than all the scientists put together. And they have been basically working a bioeconomy for millennia without damaging the ecosystem. So what would have to happen? First of all, the regeneration of the forest has to be financed by the world. Secondly, on COP26, we need to make sure that payment for carbon sequestration through planting trees and regenerating natural habitats gets paid for. If you put carbon in the ground, you get paid. Third, we have a huge climate movements, especially among the youths, from Greta Thunberg and Fridays for Future and the Sunshine, the Sunrise Movement, etc. But they are basically saying to the adults, turn things around, turn things around, turn things around, but they have not been able to embrace an alternative. And the Amazon, regenerating the Amazon and starting a bioeconomy, basically starting an ecological civilization in that area based on what the indigenous people know, is that answer. So they can embrace it. We have to listen to the indigenous leaders. They have the knowledge. They have the science. Somebody told me that Ashuar children know up to 250 types of bees with each the quality and the different qualities of their honeys. The amount of knowledge that they have is incredible. So we have to design the economy around living nature instead of this disruptive, this destructive economy that we have now, which basically throws fossil fuel made pesticides and fertilizers on a piece of land until it's so dead that it can't do anything except doing monocultures. And if we are able to get our act together and we see this forest regenerating, we can embrace that we are actually able to create this ecological civilization, because this is what needs to happen. Right now, the world is transitioning away from, trying to transition away from the challenges of climate change, but they don't see where they need to go. This is part of the vision of where we need to go. So how do we do that? Because it's really quite big. Okay, the first thing is the world starts paying 1 million people that already live in the area, that work in the area, that live in the forest, start paying them to restore the damage and create that bioeconomy. So basically, I wouldn't call it a universal basic income, but I would call it something that's pretty near. Basically, people are secure for money as long as they keep the forests alive and make it better. The cost would roughly be $1 billion per month. That's really not a lot of money if you see what is being spent on COVID programs around the world right now. Pandemic economic reversal programs, and also not if you see what we get for it, because we will get an enormous forest that starts sequestering carbon again and is part of the solution of climate change. The US, Biden has already promised that he has a bag of 20 billion euros, so that's dollars, so that's one part, and the EU could double that. So a large part of the money to turn things around is basically already sort of in the pipeline. And once reforestation really takes off, calculation is roughly, we're talking about 80 billion trees to be planted, probably half by nature. Nature is very smart. So once that starts to sequester CO2, then with satellite monitoring systems, we can actually measure how much CO2 is being taken out of the atmosphere. So it can be rewarded. So what are the main steps that need to start first? Well, start getting this huge financing apparatus done. Start hiring this million people in those communities and link them up to that financial programs of reforesting and regeneration. And of course, we need to negotiate with the governments, especially that of Brazil, to stop the destruction of the forest completely in return for money coming into the economy. Then we need to reverse the damage, and that is this huge reforestation programs. We need maybe 1,000 projects of minimum 1 million trees to start with, and that slowly will become more. There's a lot of land actually that is already sort of regenerating because it has been left behind after they cut the trees. We can just help it a bit by maybe seeding it a bit more, and that will grow back as well. And part of the reforestation will be agroforestry, meaning that we will grow food forests so that there will be a lot of food for both humans and non-humans. So the communities that are there need to become resilient. That means they have to become more vibrant and get support from this initial stream and learn and sometimes relearn to invest in this bioeconomy and see opportunities to increase their well-being. And once this is completely underway, the bioeconomy needs to grow and will get more and more structure. You could think about somebody starting solar-driven boats for transport, or somebody doing all kinds of things to restore internet connections, etc. So that will all start to happen in the forest. And from there, we make the jump to Amazonia 4.0, which is basically the next, you could call it, I don't like the word, but you could call it the next industrial revolution, where nature meets science. An example actually is there right now, that the vaccinations around the world based on RNA sequencing of the virus of the SARS-CoV-2 virus is a great example of how scientists have worked together to quickly come with a solution for the pandemic. That's just one very small possibility. So what tools will we need in order to do it? First of all, we have to assemble startup teams, because you have to see this as an ecology of teams working together, not one big organization, but sort of autonomous, but knowing to find connections where it's needed. And we need project design teams, because there's a lot of, it's basically designing our way out of trouble. We need a big gathering of the great Amazon forests, where the indigenous leaders will come together, basically do a great ceremony of healing, where stakeholders of all sorts will come together to mourn basically the situation we're in, and slowly envision the possibilities where we could go, basically signing a covenant between nature and humanity. Then the mind. We need a network program, platform. Call it, it's probably not a word that would find very, you would find it very, to call it a Facebook sort of platform where everybody could connect around certain items to get resources, to get information, to get education, to get finance. The hands. There's going to be an ecosystem basically of 1,000 or more projects for regeneration that will happen all over the area. Mind you, most of those projects and communities and cooperatives and companies are already there, but quite often they're cash starved and need a little push. And then we would do the largest crowdfunder ever. Basically, you know, they always say that the Amazon is losing a football field per minute or so. Basically, what we would do is reverse it. We'll ask the youth to start planting football fields and ask the adults, say, come on, mom, dad, uncle, grandpa, grandma, come help me because we need to heal the heart and lungs of the planet. So then we would get a sort of a passion, a global passion of the youth to really regenerate our planet. And a part of the basis is already here because half of the Amazon is already protected, either as indigenous territory or as natural reserves. And a lot of the other lands are actually government lands that are not used that much and could actually be entered into the project of regeneration. And for those, of course, we need an economic argument, and it's very simple. If you take a look at this slide, basically it says that once you, already with the current bioeconomy of getting acai berries and cocoa and Brazil nuts, if you harvest those from systems within the standing forest, you on average make 20 times more than cutting it down and put meat cows or soybeans on it. So one scientist once said that cutting the Amazon forest to put meat cows on it is like burning a Renaissance painting to cook a meal. It's a completely ridiculous situation because the area could be much more prosperous if it would focus on this bioeconomy. So here you see the difference between the two, the cattle and the soy on denuded land and the forest alive, actually giving income from produce from the forest. And it's already growing very fast. Only in Brazil, already 300,000 people are making an income from acai berries, and this is just the start. And usually the working conditions they work on is much better than the ones that work on the ranches. And it's only the start because there's more than 3,000 edible fruits, leaves, roots, nuts, and seeds already identified within the forest. Can you imagine how much more things we could get to produce in the forest that would make humanity happy? There's a lot of medical plants and substances that can be derived from it, already are, but many more that we don't know about yet. So, and then we come, once we have this bioeconomy going on acai berries and other produce that's already there, basically supporting that economy to grow bottom up, then we can start into the most exciting part, and that is basically clubbing the indigenous science of all the knowledge, the intimate knowledge of the biodiversity with modern technology to produce much more high value products like fragrances, like things for cosmetics, but also ecotourism, because being in the forest really alleviates and relaxes your minds. There are many, many possibilities. So here is a small map of the Amazon, and it's only the dots are only in the Brazilian area again, but of course it's much larger than that. You see the green area going over the 9 countries. But all these communities, the forest is not empty. There's many communities there, and if we can connect them to an Amazon platform where they can get education, get instruction, get e-healthcare, because a lot of diagnosis can be done online these days. We can get e-commerce done, e-banking, e-everything. They would have the possibility to do to connect to this growing bioeconomy and have the services that we are all used to as part of the new way of living. Okay, the part that is difficult for many to understand immediately, including myself, is that there's going to be a fourth industrial revolution, basically where nature meets science and technology. To give you an example, just a simple one, which I like very much, is that a bunch of scientists, they studied how fireflies were lighting up their bum, and they found the structure of the way they did it and added that to the design of LED lighting, and that increased LED lighting by 15%. I could give you many more examples, but the time is not right for now. Another one here is, for instance, very feather-light materials have been found looking at the way spiders make their webs. So all kinds of materials can come online. So once we're getting into this Amazonia 4.0, the biodiversity of the forest will give humanity many more opportunities to treat infectious diseases and inherited diseases, maybe find drugs to slow down or reverse aging, create new biological synthetic fuels that are not detrimental like the ones that are used now, and creating all kinds of new biomaterials that will there is, for instance, one of the things that I like very much. We're used to the fact that if we cut ourselves or we take off a branch from a plant, they heal. So healing materials is something of the future if we just mimic nature. I'm going to leave this complex picture right now because this is the second time I'm going through it and we're running a little bit out of time. But basically there is a model for the bioeconomics to take off, but centered around important values of harnessing nature's values, doing it ecologically sound, making it equitable and fair, and let everybody share the benefits. So to kick off this huge project, basically what would have to emerge is all kinds of teams that loosely work together. First of all, we would need indigenous and other ambassadors in the 9 Amazon countries. We would need people with access to the US government, the European Union at high level, and to China to talk about this solution. We would need local youths, NGOs, and the global climate activists to come together to co-design the future for the Amazon, to give them the spirit of the possibility of a sustainable tomorrow. We would need real geniuses in terms of software and architecture, digital architecture, to design an online presence and sort of make this ecosystem of everybody related to this huge project to integrate into a platform where they can find each other and work together on all kinds of projects and solutions, because we're talking about thousands of projects and millions of people. We would need scientists and communities and companies to extend the possibilities of the bioeconomy and the Amazonia 4.0. Mapping, for instance, all the species that are there and see what possibilities it will give for new products and medicine. And we would need a support team and a start of the finance to get this project off the ground, to get a foundation done and a steering team to at least get the first layers of administration and support off the ground. So how will you join the great turning in the Amazon? And with that, we hope actually the change of the way we are living on this planet. These are 2 buggers that are very near to my heart. This little fellow somehow is related to me and lives in the favelas of Rio. And the jaguar was already in my conscience at the age of 6. And these are just three lovely Indigenous girls saying thank you. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Oh, I have to make some light here. It's getting dark in Amsterdam. One moment. Hello, everybody. Oh, I see David and Hans are still there. That's very kind of you to stick around for the second turn. So shall we open up the discussion to, and people have questions or remarks, and maybe we're only with 13, I think everybody can unmute themselves. Questions, remarks, anybody? Franklin, did I see you awake?
I'm afraid I got here late, but what I did hear, is a great inspiring effort to begin a very necessary work. And I was writing in the chat, maybe this is an idea whose time has come. And then I made a leap to, at a stage like this, we need everybody on board. We can't all do the same thing. We can only do what we're here to do. What gifts we have, what are we going to do to help make this change? And I said, artists can help people recognize greed as a toxic cancer that has possession of our souls and is shriveling us into subhuman forces. And artists can help people see that where greed is at work, we need to help save those people from the disease that has captured them and is not only dragging them down, but dragging the world down with them. So artists can help in that respect.
Absolutely. If I envision it as art and artists, poets, singers, they will all be part of the big transformation of, basically it's a transformation of consciousness.
Rob, this is Jason Keene. I had expressed this question before to you in an email and also in the chat, but I think I found the answer. So the question is, like, how would this project, extremely sweeping, ambitious project, relate to all the vast network of existing NGOs that are working around the Amazon and the rainforest issues? But are there any that are focused on the Carlos Nobre vision specifically? Are there any other NGOs that are specifically active on the Amazonia 3.0 or 4.0 bioeconomy idea? Because that might be maybe that's the big differentiator.
The short answer is yes. By the way, let me first say that this is an umbrella project, but basically once you have that platform operating, that digital platform operating, you will get an integration, an ecosystem of projects that are communicating with each other. Because right now, as you are well aware, there are an incredible amount of NGOs and projects and cooperatives. I counted about 1,000, so there's about 1,000 mentioned in my project, but they are not communicating or not communicating enough, and that needs to be elevated. So that's part of the answer. Mm-hmm. Yes, Carlos Nobre is working with, especially, I forget, one of the richest guy in Brazil. He owns, he is one of the largest eco entrepreneurs of the world, and they are actually working to roll this out. And there are several other projects. The Biogenome project, for instance, has some ideas of designing creative Amazonian creative labs. So yes, there's a couple, but what you see quite often is that we have the solutions. We have the people who want to make the change. Actually, we don't have to invent things. We have to connect them. Everything is there. The finance is even there. So the key is in fact is about connection, and I think that's both at the level of consciousness and connecting to the planet as a whole and to the future of our species. But also technologically, where people can easily get on board and check in with their specific requests or expertise or resource demands or offer. So it's about design, basically. I don't know if that sort of answers your question in a broad sense.
It's good enough for the moment. Yeah. I mean, so you're definitely looking at that whole problem, and the issue is the connectivity and getting all these pieces to work together in a more complete way.
Sure, but listen, no one person could lead this. This shouldn't be leading. There should be a sort of a distributed leadership in this project, a sort of collective consciousness that builds itself. It's an ecosystem rather than an organization with a top-down and linear kind of thinking.
Okay, that's good, because that's kind of where my mind would go too. Yeah,
okay,
thanks.
Thank you. Anybody?
Hi, Rob.
Hi there. I can't see who's talking.
Yes, my name is Adam, and I had an opportunity to listen to your entire presentation earlier, and then again the second round, and I'd like to bring attention back to a couple of the people from the first round, which was about blockchain.
Yeah.
And the value here is so enormous. I'm going to speak to some of my contacts, because essentially there's you could call it a bubble, but there's a lot of money flowing into decentralized finance right now.
Yeah.
And the pattern is someone or a team come up with an idea that hasn't been built yet, but the framework is there and the roadmap is there. And then they tokenize the idea. And if you want to be a stakeholder in that token, you simply buy some through this new platform that's, you know, getting more popular and expanding by the day. And what really strikes me about the framework you've presented is, I mean, you mentioned connectivity is the key.
Yeah.
But and that the finance is there, but I think it's the driver, because I've never seen people all over the world connected through the excitement to watch the token or tokens that they invest in appreciate in value. People want a return on their investment, and they want to do good things, and they're willing to put their money into good things. But the primary objective for people is to make sure they gain value on what they put into. So if you distributed a token that was in charge of this overarching plan, that the stakeholders were these 26 governors and some of the bureaucratic hurdles that would actually have some of this token, the million or so individuals and 1,000 or so organizations that would benefit financially for having basically what's called an airdrop. So a token that's given to them, that's basically shared with them, so they're a part of the action. You don't even need to ask permission. You can actually just send it to them so they have it, and they're welcome to participate in it. And so basically the whole thing can be made in advance, shared with all the key stakeholders, including those that would be an impediment to the process because of their interests in seeing things go on as usual. And yeah, my hunch is that it's a lot simpler than you may imagine, because once people have some skin in the game, they want to see the project, you know, grow exponentially, really. So I'm just sharing a few initial thoughts,
Adam,
but yeah, I'm really, really excited about what you've done. And I do think that the time may be ripe for this stuff happening in the background in the decentralized finance space to completely and perfectly apply to what you're trying to do. So
Adam, thank you very much for your comment. I think blockchain and the possibilities there are crucial to what I call the Amazon network platform, because it would basically put a new system, not just of finance, but also of contracting, because contracting would obviously become much less dubious than it's now. And so definitely, yes. I think what is very important, it's completely above my pay grade, so I wouldn't even try to understand how it could be designed. But it would be great if a group of people would come together, establish a couple of ground rules, because we don't want to create new billionaires. That's not the issue. We need to get people secure in basically a universal basic income, in a sense, while restoring nature. So yes, absolutely. And now my question to you is, okay, to get this off the ground, teams have to pop up doing different things. For instance, what you are saying. Can you form one?
Definitely.
Thank you.
I have a few conversations I'd like to have. I've just been so drawn to what you're sharing here, and maybe I'll reach out to you in the next couple of days.
Please
with,
try to read a little bit more into detail through the plan, because there's a couple of ground rules about which I think this project and the bioeconomy should arise from, because it's about social equity, about not too much difference in, not too much inequality, the sharing of benefits, etc., the opposite of greed, etc.
Yeah, being a human being is a tricky process, right? How do you keep that balance without making things even worse in your efforts to make them better?
Well, listen, it might be a problem for some of us, but most of us would probably sign on a dotted line as if they got to hear, listen, you're not going to be rich, but we'll take care of your basic needs the rest of your lives. Just go and have fun. So
I'd like to say, I imagine an outcome where your vision and this shared vision is invigorated. So it's an exciting opportunity to basically reclaim the Amazon and make it flourish, and just the excitement behind that. What would that look like? What would it look like even to those who are in the cattle industry, even to the governors that are, at the top of their game in these different regions? Like, how would that look exciting to almost everybody involved? And yeah, that would make it work. I think that would change the game overnight. So I'm just, yeah, thank you so much for
thank you. Please reach out. You have my details, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, wonderful. Richard,
Rob,
hi. Pleased to meet you.
Hi, Rob. I have two questions. One is, what kind of impact do you think Joe Biden's commitment of $20 billion during the campaign? I've not heard him talk about it since, but I'm sure he's good for his word. How much impact do you think that'll make? And wanted to let you know that a year ago, Joaquin Phoenix and Moby and I got the LA City Council to pass the first ever divestment law for a city that I know of. And what the law said was that the city of Los Angeles was no longer legally allowed to buy products, especially meat, which is why Joaquin and Moby were very involved, obviously, from deforested Amazon land. And I'm just wondering if that kind of law went viral, right, and other cities followed suit, how much of an impact that could have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, definitely. I think the movement right now, I'm in Europe, I'm not in Brazil, but the movement to get away from meat is certainly taking traction. Is getting more traction among young people for sure. It's at least the urban ones. So there's a lot of dynamics and movement there. With regards to the
No,
Biden,
the point, listen, I mean, I've been a vegetarian for, most of my life. And I think there's a movement that is growing there. But I think in addition to getting people to eat more acai and less, meat, for example, having cities literally pass laws that they are not allowed in their schools, in their city cafeterias, et cetera, to purchase any products, furniture, soy, meat, et cetera, from deforested Amazon.
oh, that's already
Is that
happening.
happening?
That's already happening. In fact, the European Parliament is busy with what you call supply chain due diligence, and I think the right now the legislation is sort of in a consultatory round or something like that. But basically, it would mean that your product has to be forest free, or you cannot import it. And that means that you have to have complete supply chain transparency, and that's going on. And you are very familiar, I'm sure, with what the wonderful work that Trace is doing. They have that website where you can really click to a private limited, whoever is getting soy from which area. So that is a matter of time. That's going to happen in the EU. And if that could happen in the United States, basically, the only thing we need then is to convince China, because right now what happens is what we stop eating from Brazil is getting absorbed by China. But China needs to be involved. But yes, I think there's a lot going on in that direction.
And the Joe Biden question?
Well, listen, it's a big bag of money. And it was funny that yesterday the terrible minister of environment in Brazil, Salles, he said that he would promise to cut back deforestation by 40% next year if Joe Biden wrote him a check now upfront for $1 billion. Well, I would count my fingers if I gave that guy a hand. But anyway, money talks in Brazil. They're desperate for money, and it's something they understand. So I think that smart diplomats in John Kerry group will surely make sure that at least the destruction can be slowed down pretty fast by just doing the carrot and stick thing. So I think we can do that. I can, at least slowing down the destruction can be done pretty quickly.
But if only China, back to your other point, was the buyer and the rest of the world stopped buying, wouldn't that reduce demand, reduce the price, and therefore make it less attractive to do what they're doing? Or is China happy to pay whatever price that Brazil offers?
Honestly, I really can't tell. I know that China is basically already working at a long-term food security for China, as you are probably well aware of, because they understand what's down the pipeline. So they're more thinking strategically. And at the same time, there's still about, 300 million people of Chinese that are waiting to have enough income to start putting meat on the table more regularly. So demand is certainly going up there unless there are measures there. And I think they might be in the pipeline because, China, it's a black box for most of us. But they do have they have an economic growth thing, but they also do understand the ecological challenges that are ahead of us. So I think there will be a mix of things in a sense. And I think we can talk to them. I think the EU will definitely talk to China about the Amazon if we can get them to embrace saving the Amazon. I think they will, and Biden will do too, or John Kerry will.
And by chance, have you seen the proposal for the saving of the rainforest in exchange for money? And are there measurable benchmarks and quantifiable targets and things like that in it?
No, well, there was before the big bag of 20 billion. There is a Biden team, by the way, that focuses only on the Amazon. I haven't been able to get in touch with them because they don't return my emails for obvious reasons, because They don't know me, but I think they will come up with the proposals. And actually, before Bolsonaro was in place, there was a 1 or 2 billion per year project, basically funded by Germany and Norway, with clear benchmarks about reforestation and nature protection and stuff. So those programs are there. And in fact, from the time of Lula, President Lula in Brazil, there is a program which is called Bolsa Verde, which was rolled out, basically people getting paid also to protect nature and reforest certain areas. So there are already certain structures that probably could be vitalized and scaled up.
Thanks.
I just want to say real quickly how much I like these ideas I heard. And I talked about greed and the idea of taming the dragon, right? You don't want to slay the dragon, you tame it. And that idea of blockchain sounds like the perfect way to tame the dragon. People need to survive. They can put their money here and invest it. It'd be beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. And anybody who thinks about blockchain, I think there's one thing I would really like to add to the recipe. Blockchain right now is something that's made especially difficult to follow. That's part of the thing. I think we should turn it around and make it completely transparent, so that every transaction that would happen in the system between parties could be seen and clicked on by anybody. So just to counter corruption, because Brazil is probably one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Online transparency of all blockchain transactions. Nobody has anything to hide. And I mean, once a salary goes into somebody's account for the month, okay, there it stops. But all transactions between companies, between expenses, etc., you simply click on them and see where they go. Anyway, so that's just a small thing.
Rob,
yeah, it totally works that way, and it's a smart contract, and every part of it is available for all to see and can be unpacked. And the beauty of it is it really bypasses legalese and lawyers and extra middlemen and paperwork, because the logic has to stand the test of the actual needs of the transaction, right?
Yes.
So it's amazing stuff, and it's evolving quickly. And it's like if you've ever sat with a lawyer and tried to make a document, and your intentions, and then he or she is trying to translate those intentions into the document you want. That's basically what the smart contract is doing, but with code, all open, all to see, no nonsense. Yeah, if done right, it's really great, really incredible. It's definitely the future of economics. It's just beginning now. So.
Oh, I'm sure it is. And you know, one thing that's very important in the Amazon, because the distances are so long and there's still a lot of cash transactions, the blockchain can simply work as an escrow. I pay you and basically put the money in escrow, and once I get my produce, the money is automatically released. So that would be one way to make that economic system much more secure than it is now, because a lot of transactions now go pear-shaped.
Rob, Jason again, is there any way to pin down the one most pivotal or essential principle of your project, or is it really multi-layered agenda that you can't really separate out, like one from the other?
Honestly, for me, it's not something I would express in every meeting, but for me, it's a jump in consciousness. Because I think in the end, we're talking about the only way our species will get ourselves out of this mess is when we get a viral jump in consciousness and people connecting to the whole planet. So that is at the most fundamental level. But I can give you at other levels as well. The economic one is a very simple one. Once you show that you can actually make 20 times more money on a hectare of land if you let the forest stand instead of cutting it down. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we can we persuade a couple of people too. So in that sense, it's layered. It's technology, it's platforming and integration, it's consciousness, and it's economics. Maybe those are the three most important ones.
I mean, I totally, I think I take the consciousness transformation for granted in a way. I mean, that clearly needs to happen, and it's sort of, but it's not clear how you integrate that into a sort of organizational structure, you know, apart from giving, you know, asking everybody to take ayahuasca a few times before they get on board. But I mean, that's you know, that aside, like, I guess I had read about Carlos Nobre's concept or proposal already in, I think, spring or early last year, and was really struck by it and tried reaching out to him. And I didn't really see any other way of following up on it, you know, but so that's kind of what excited me about your plan, is that somebody's trying to, you know, unfold you know, a structure around that kind of a model. So, you know, it's exciting.
Yes, it definitely has all kinds of possibilities. With regards to the consciousness jump, honestly, I think we should leave it to the indigenous people. I think they have a couple of tricks up their sleeves that we don't really realize.
Hope so. We need it.
Well, we definitely need it. Sweet people, are there any more questions?
Hey, just to put one more thing out there about maybe like taming this dragon, as Franklin mentioned, as opposed to slaying it, and consciousness. It's something, let's say you had an agreement with one of these 1,000 groups that are doing something specific, and they send their outline and their benchmarks and that is basically published and declared, like, we are going to hit these different benchmarks, and they all have some kind of monetary amount attached to them. And when they achieve a benchmark, they send onto this platform basically evidence of their achievement, and then the community can up and down rank it to see if they hit the credentials for the next segment of income, which could go directly to the tokens of the people who are involved in the project. So
exactly,
it's just so, and so over time, people are rewarded for doing the proper thing, and naturally, you know, maybe just naturally it would segue, the behavior would segue into something better things, right? Better results.
Actually, it's completely feasible, and I think in one point it's even easier, because I've seen these satellite monitoring systems now that can basically assess the increased amount of carbon on a piece of land, and if you do that times a certain price on carbon, it could be automated.
Getting people on board involves the human spirit, and the human spirit, we're talking mythology. There's a myth about the king of the people of art and skill. When he's first asked to be the king, he says, "What advice do you give me?" And Nuada says, "Ask all the people what they can contribute at this time." So everybody's called to the table. Artists, poets, musicians, warriors, smiths, doctors, everybody come to the table. What can you bring so that we can get this done?
This is a big ceremony of abundance and of giving.
And an idea whose time has come. I put a lot of stock in that idea, because we've been watching this for 50 years, like a train wreck in slow motion. But now, big things have happened in the last year, obviously, and I think that this is an idea whose time has come. We need to all come together to save this to save the ecology.
Yes.
If we can do it through an economic transformation where everybody is going to get something for what they're putting in, beautiful.
Wonderful. Dear people, I think I slowly want to round off. It's been 2.5 hours. And I thank you very much for the enthusiasm, and I hope you will reach out. And as Franklin said, basically, this is going to be people coming all with gifts to turn the situation around in this most important biome of the world. Gifts of knowledge, gifts of intelligence, gifts of love, etc. And then teams will emerge that will take specific problems and take on certain chunks of this whole thing and start working together in a sort of an ecosystem to slowly get this project underway. We have enough people who want to make the change. We have enough knowledge to do it. What we need is to integrate it, and that integration is a form of consciousness and digital integration. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to hear from all of you. Mind you, it's very important that we find a system quickly to organize ourselves in groups, because obviously this couldn't be a one-man show for all kinds of reasons. So I hope you will make this plan yours and change it for the better, and hope that something very, very important will come out of this. Thank you very much. Wishing you a lovely day or evening.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kat.
for your vision.
Thank you, Bobby. Bye-bye.
Great enthusiasm.